fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And we're late, but it's still thriller month.
Are we late?
We are late.
Oops.
We are late. I'm sorry, guys. We missed a week. There was stuff.
It's summer.
It's summer. Everybody gets busy with things, unfortunately. So we're a little bit behind in recording. We're a little bit behind with everything, but we're here. And we actually wanted to finish the month of June. So we're here, and we're still talking about thrillers for this entire month. And today, we're talking about an adaptation that was actually more recent, which we rarely do, so it's nice sometimes to talk about a newer film. We're going to be talking about the 2022 Netflix adaptation of Luckiest Girl Alive. I think I'm going to give a blanket trigger warning to this episode, just for people, school shooting, sexual assault, rape, just in case you're not aware. We went into this movie pretty blind.
Yeah.
Actually, we didn't really know too much about it. So just so that everyone's aware, there is quite a heavy focus on all of those things. So if that's really something that you're not comfortable with, cool. I totally get it. Yeah. Feel free to skip ahead, basically, and not really be here for this. And we will see you next time. I don't think we have anything else that we need to cover about it. So I think we just need to get right into the movie.
Let's go.
Love my work, hate babies. I'm this close to the life no one thought I deserved.
This is Ani. Nice to meet you.
Mr. Larson, it's me. Tiffany.
Tiffany?
I'm working on a documentary about the incident at your high school. There are still so many questions that you've never answered. People want to know, were you a hero or an accomplice?
Imagine what it's going to be like when they find out about
So, like I said, the movie was released 2022 on Netflix and is based on the 2015 novel of the same name by an author named Jessica Knoll, who actually also wrote the screenplay to the film, it turns out.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know the film stars Mila Kunis, so if you didn't recognize the title, you might have seen last year, there was a Netflix movie that was released with Mila Kunis that looked very much in that thriller sort of suspense psychological atmosphere. It's this movie.
Yeah.
It's hard to know where to start with this.
What's the IMDb or the
So,
Rotten
okay.
Tomato?
So IMDb is currently 6.4 out of 10, and Rotten Tomatoes is at 43%. And the audience score is 72%.
Yeah, okay, that's better. I would give it a solid 75, I would say.
I'm closer to a 60 personally.
Are you?
I don't think it's shitty enough. The performances are too good for it to be 43.
Yeah.
And overall the atmosphere of it in general, I would say is too good for it to be a 43.
Yeah.
But I would have trouble giving it over a 70, I'm not going to lie.
I mean, I didn't fall asleep, so...
Yes, fine. That is Shireen's one index. It definitely deserves over 65%, Megan. I didn't fall asleep during the movie.
It kept me interested enough that I stayed awake.
Oh, boy. Okay, so... brief overview. Luckiest Girl Alive stars Mila Kunis in the lead role as Ani Finelli, a shortened version of the name Tiffany, it turns out.
Surprising.
Who is getting married. The film is set the year that the book was published in 2015, because it's the first line of dialogue tells you that it's 2015. What I will say, because of the subject matter in this film, it's not a bad thing to set it then, because we're looking at just before the Trump election, and prior to Me Too, and so the context of it actually fits quite well. I didn't think about it initially, but when I started catching on to certain aspects of the story, I was like, oh yeah, okay. I was like, that's actually not a bad idea.
It does make sense, and I mean, the book was published in 2015, so... interesting that then everything kind of blew up after. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think at that time things were starting to head in a particular direction as far as people's feelings about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of things to do with Me Too, a lot of things to do with sexual assault and that sort of situation. So I think it was a timely book, obviously, and based on that, setting the film in that time sphere kind of makes sense. There are even a couple of context clues, at the beginning of the film, where there are there are campaign posters for Hillary Clinton, sitting in different places and stuff.
Her friend says, I'm only going to get married when we have a woman for a president.
Oh,
so
right,
that'll
yes.
be soon then. Yeah.
That's true. They do talk about it briefly,
when
don't
she
they?
said that, I was like, so close.
Oh, you're like, oh.
Let's not go
Let's
there.
not go there. No one wants to hear about that. Yeah. So, Ani is the lead editor at a women's magazine in New York, basically. And one of those very, like,
Kind of, I think
like
it's supposed to be
Cosmo.
like Cosmo.
Yeah. Because it's very like, like sort of like, like 10 ways to give your man the best orgasm kinds of things are like the sort of like the tagline she has to come up with.
Yeah.
She doesn't love that. She's obviously a talented writer. She's interested in, this is where she's been able to make a name for herself, but she's definitely interested in working in a more serious vein. Her dream is to work for the New York Times magazine. Like that is her top tier, basically what she'd really like to do, because she'd really like to write about something more important than this. So she kind of works in that corporate world and we don't really know very much about her to start off with. However, what we're given to understand from a lot of like the narration from her character is that she was brought up without too much money, like more like lower middle class kind of situation, and single mom has had to work very hard for everything that she's achieved. But now that she really likes to give the impression that she's always been this way.
Well, I mean, she's marrying into money, right?
Like a lot of money.
Like she was kind of, it's funny because she's describing her fiance at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's in a tone that I felt was very cynical and very sarcastic.
It was.
And I was like, wow, like this is the person that you're marrying. Like she was saying about how they go skiing in one place and I can't remember where.
Oh, yes, because Aspen is too overrun with new
Nouveau
money or
riche,
nouveau riche kind of thing. I was like, oh, God, okay.
Yeah, so it's like she's being very snarky and cynical and like
And you're like, do you love your fiance? Like,
this is
immediately. I was like, oh.
And like at the beginning I was a little bit like, okay, well maybe it's just because like, she doesn't appreciate the world that he comes from, but he's different maybe, and as she's describing herself, she just sounds miserable. Like, she hasn't eaten lunch in 6 years. Like she doesn't eat carbs. She works out constantly to give this illusion of being one of them.
Being one of the rich people. And I think that now that obviously she's marrying this man as well, I think she feels the need to try even harder to act that way.
And it's funny, I don't know if you noticed this, but like her best friend is obviously old money. And her friend is nowhere near as like dressed up and put together as she is all the time.
Old money doesn't do that because they don't need
care.
to.
Yeah, like she looks kind of like disheveled and scruffy most of the time. Not disheveled and scruffy, but like
very casual.
Very casual. She's wearing like a sweater and a pair of jeans, whereas like Mila Kunis's character is always wearing like this like beautiful dress, like
really
very,
nice and
very,
spike
like,
heels.
Kate Middleton.
Yes,
kind
she
of.
does give that kind of vibe for sure. So,
Yeah.
in fact, I think when she's trying on wedding dresses later, there's a comment to that effect about like Kate Middleton didn't wear something with this type of like tool on it to get married, so I'm not going to do that. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and like her wedding dress is just very plain and like boring and like, I don't know, kind of Grace Kelly, I guess. Like,
yeah, sort of similar to that in an old money, I don't want to ruffle any feathers kind of way.
And it's interesting because like Kate Middleton, Grace Kelly, and like her, they were not royals, right? Like, but they married into royalty, and so they had to kind of play the part and look as if they were.
Yes, exactly. And that's something, I mean, that we, in more like recent years, obviously in the last couple of years, probably this year, last year, that we've seen a lot with like, Meghan Markle talking about her experience and kind of the types of clothing choices that she would make when joining the royal family, et cetera, those kinds of things. So, et cetera. So, Ani is a big fat fake is basically what like the whole thing of it is.
She knows it too.
Oh,
she's like afraid others are gonna notice.
Yeah, she's very upfront about it. Yeah. And does things. This is a really interesting thing that like you see come back a bit throughout the story. That I'm like, okay, the story flashes back often to her experience when she was in high school in 1999. She was there on a scholarship because it was like a more expensive private school that she was going to, and she'd managed to get a writing scholarship there. So what we see a lot, kind of, you see throughout the course of the film, you see how her past affects her present way of being. So like in the past, I mean, she says, and her mom, obviously this is growing up with like the type of mother character that she has, make comments about the fact that she was supposedly overweight when she was in high school, which I was like, oh boy. Her mom says something to the effect that she developed early, because I'm like, hey, because she had boobs by the time she got there. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, because doesn't her mom say, like, you don't know what it's like to have a teenager
who developed early
and, like, to try and protect her and stuff?
Yeah,
and you're just like,
very weird things to say.
It's very unclear what's happened, like, at the beginning of the movie. You know, like, it just kind of keeps doing these, like, little snippets of a flashback, and you're not really sure what happened.
What the situation is. When she arrives at said high school, I think she looks incredible. She looks like somebody from The Craft, because she's got her little choker on, and I was like, fuck yes.
That's what I thought about as well, like, immediately. I'm like, oh yeah, 99.
I was like, where is Nev Campbell and Firuza Balk? Let's just watch this movie now. It's going to be way more fun. Anyway. Yeah. So we get like a little bit of kind of indication of that, and they're a little on the nose with like how much she quote unquote like fakes things, because she goes for pizza with her fiance, and when he leaves to go to the bathroom, there's one piece of pizza left. He says they should box it up, and she literally crams the entire piece of pizza into her mouth to just, I don't know, actually probably eat fucking food.
I couldn't put my finger on what that was about.
It was weird, because I was like, is this really an eating disorder? Because it feels like an eating disorder, and it was weird. It was very strange. I don't know. It was very restrictive dieting.
Yeah, and then like, she blames it on the waitress that
she spilled my Coke or whatever on it or whatever, so we're not bringing it home anyway. Yeah. So you start to get an idea of kind of like this facade that she's built, and it's interspersed with what we start to see is her that's joining this sort of like prestigious private school. Seemingly, I would have thought that this character would have been ostracized for much longer, but it doesn't seem like that was the case. It seemed like, she was accepted pretty quickly by like one group of friends who were like the less popular kids, whatever, the weirdos, quote unquote. So there's Arthur, Ben, and Beth is the other girl, I think.
Beth, yeah.
She was in Ginny and Georgia, and that was the only reason I recognized who she was.
Really?
Yeah, she's what's his name's like the sort of ex-girlfriend that he was fooling around with, who works at the restaurant with Georgia.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Or with Ginny, sorry.
Yep, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So she's part of like their friend group, but of course, because she always wants to fit in, she actually starts being accepted by like the popular crowd, quote unquote, and they want to hang out with her, and she has a crush on one of the guys, Peyton. Which one does she have a crush on? Liam. Sorry.
Liam, yeah.
Jesus. There's Peyton, Liam and Dean.
Yeah.
And the blonde girl, who knows?
And there's like some really bitchy girls.
Hillary or Heather or something.
Isn't it, Hillary or...
I think it might be Hillary, I'm not sure.
Something like that, but they're just really mean to her because they say that she's like the social or the financial aid kid.
Yes, yeah. One of them's like a really big dick to her. Because she's just talking about like how like only like financial aid kids get scholarships and shit like that. And you're like, yeah, I know, that's literally what a scholarship is for. Is for people who cannot afford. It's financial aid to be able to attend this school anyway. Semantics, but so we get a little bit of that back and forth, and then when we're throughout the course of basically like present day, quote unquote, 2015, what's going on is that Annie's working with her boss to try and get a spot at New York Times Magazine, because that's really where she wants to be working. And so they're working towards that. And meanwhile, Luke, her fiance, has been offered a position in London to run some group of rich people, God, who cares, a hedge fund or something.
Jumbo finance shit.
Yeah, some garbage. And of course, he would like to move there after the wedding. And so he's suggested that, they move there, she get her MFA, basically, because she's been accepted into a program in London for this. And
what is that MFA?
It must be Masters of Fine Arts.
Oh, it must be for her writing.
For writing.
Yeah.
Because then he said, get your MFA and then write a book.
Right.
But I'm like, maybe she doesn't want to write a book.
I know.
What a stupid thing to say.
People say that in movies. They're like, just write a book. It's like,
maybe I don't want to.
Sure, I'll just write a book.
Like maybe I do want to, but maybe I fucking don't either.
Maybe I do want to, but like, it's also very subjective. Like,
100%.
It doesn't mean if I write a book that it's going to be successful.
Immediately successful either. No. So we're getting a lot of like this sort of indication that no matter what's going on, Ani, since she was a kid, has been shaping herself to fit the mold that she believes is the correct way of acting, even if she's not really like that.
Well, she says it during, she had this aha moment when she went on a senior class trip to New York City where she sees a woman who's like on the phone and she's super well put together. And it's in that moment that she decides that that's what she wants. She wants to be the woman who...
That powerful woman in business, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's able to, like, boss people around.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's happening that we're getting in present day is that we're also seeing that Ani's being approached by this guy who's a documentary filmmaker, and we learn that he's making a true crime documentary, basically, about in 1999 when she was still in high school, there was a school shooting at the school that she was at that time, and we also kind of learn that basically there was a rumor that was started. We don't know immediately how, but there was a rumor that was started around that same time after the shooting that she took part in it in some way, that she helped plan it. Yeah. And so she was ostracized by everyone at her high school afterward and had to deal with a lot of shit. And we're getting the feeling they bring up one of the three guys in the popular group there, Dean. He's some sort of congressman or something.
He's in politics, and I think he lobbies for like gun control.
Again, yeah, exactly, for gun control.
Because he got shot and he was no longer able to walk again after that.
So he's in a wheelchair and because his spinal cord was severed, I believe. So he's in a wheelchair, and so because of that, obviously he's made it his life's mission to lobby against gun violence and for gun control specifically, and he's become very famous for that. He's written books. Oh yeah, he's a big
like
deal,
adored. Like he's like the golden boy, and I think the rapist Brock Turner.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Yeah. So so we're seeing that she's being approached and she's refusing to do the documentary initially. Eventually she does agree to do it, and her fiance initially supports her because he's like, I think you should do it and just like get your story out on paper and clear your name because you did not plan this shooting. This is ridiculous. Like you should be able to say that in like a larger space where other people will have to hear you say that. But obviously her fiance doesn't know the whole story either. So we flash forward during like the high school years of things. She's obviously made friends with a bit of both crowds. This is a really interesting school. It's not very cliquish because all these people are around each other all the time, which is bizarre.
Well, it's like a boarding school, isn't it? Like they have to sleep at the school?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that they sleep there.
Okay, well that might be why then. So basically what happens is that there's a school dance one night that everybody's like having a good time at, except again, the three shits, Liam, Peyton, and Dean, which like, I mean, listen to their names. Obviously, they're mean to people. No offense to any Liam, Peytons, and Deans out there, but I'm just saying. Yeah. Obviously, they're assholes to people named Arthur and Ben is what I'm saying. So they're always shitty to them, which, like, obviously there's always got to be one or two that we pick on, right, guys? Yeah. We can't just, like, I don't know, just not talk to people we don't get along with, or just not speak to people we don't get along with, nothing like that. Okay, cool, great. In the middle of the dance, a few of the girls take off, and it turns out the guys take off as well, and they go to whose place? Dean's place for a party? Dean's place for a party, to his house. His parents are away, blah, 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 blah. So they take off and go there. There's this big-ass house party, and everyone, like, most people wind up there. I don't think Arthur and Ben are there, but most people wind up there. All the, like, popular people wind up there. Yeah. And Ani gets really drunk while she's there.
No, I think they give her
Did they slip rape. Something?
Yeah, because she's like completely unconscious.
I know she was, but I was super unclear about whether or not they actually did. I was like, did they slip something?
They never specifically say it.
You never see anything happen.
The way that it's filmed is like she can't even keep her eyes open.
That is true. I could believe that. Yeah. So she obviously, it's basically made clear that she loses consciousness at some point. Again, trigger warning, everybody who's still listening. She loses consciousness at some point, comes to on the floor in the bathroom, and like is being assaulted by Peyton.
I think it's Peyton.
It's Peyton.
First.
Liam had already done it at that point because she has flashbacks to him on top of her.
Yeah, and she's like she's pushing his face.
Yes, because she's like, stop, and he thinks she's
saying ow.
Yeah, and
ow.
he just kisses her hand because anyway, okay, doesn't matter.
Well, because she had like a crush on Liam.
She did, and they were
like,
kind of together.
Dating.
Yeah. Like, so unfortunately, one of the girls actually in the popular group was having to run out of the party because her mom had showed up, and she kept trying to get Ani to go with her, and she was like, oh no, I can't because the boy that she likes is there. Fuck, you're like 15.
15 is such a dangerous age.
Oh, it's awful. God. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, anyway, like you're at this party. This boy is giving you so much attention. Like, obviously you're going to stay there and you're just going to want to hang out with him. Yep. So yeah. So after so far we've seen 2 of these boys have assaulted her at different times throughout the evening. And then she mostly has sobered up, which makes this other one like really
even worse.
Unpleasant to see. She is kind of stumbling around the house, still out of it, trying to find her way basically to leave because she's like, I think, starting to properly realize what's happened.
Yeah.
And Dean then chooses that time to try to convince her not to leave the house, and then basically violently sexually assault her as well.
He rapes her.
Yeah,
big time.
While she's again saying "ow," pushing him, and
she's saying, "Please wait,
please stop,"
yeah,
over and over again.
Yeah.
And so we've seen that all of that has happened. She takes off after that, and basically, like barefoot, like runs down the street in the rain, winds up at a gas station convenience store, I think close by. And I mean, I will say at least one decently saving grace, runs into her favorite teacher, who's her English teacher. His name's Mr. Larson, who is like, what the fuck is going on? And obviously very quickly pieces together, what has happened. We did see Mr. Larson earlier when he let the girls leave the dance, even though he wasn't supposed to.
Yeah. And
but he was just...
to his credit, the whole time I was watching this scene, I was like, I really hope he doesn't try and cover this up because like he could get in trouble for it. And he does not.
He does not. I will give him that.
He really encourages her to go to the cops.
He does. He wants to take her to the hospital. Yeah. He wants her to get checked out. He wants to call her mom. Yeah, he wants to do all of these things. And she's trying to explain her mom sucks, by the way. Like, we haven't really touched on that. But her mom is very much one of these, like, I've clawed my way to the semi-top now, and we're going to make sure that we...
semi-trash top.
Yeah, that's it. And now we're going to make sure that we stay on top of this heap, and we work really hard so that you can get to an even better place than I was. So she doesn't want to tell her mom because she's like, she would just be mad at me, which is so sad. That was sad when she said that.
Yeah, but then you see later on...
It's true.
It's true. Like, it's so tragic.
It's awful. Yeah. So, luckily she's able to, luckily, Mr. Larson, like, he lets her shower at his place, gives her a change of clothes. He does have, like, a moment of where I'm like... where he's like, you can't really be here because I could get in like really big trouble because you're here. And I'm like,
fair enough.
Which is like, I get, but I'm like, don't say that to her. Anyway. And we're seeing basically not long after this back at school, Mr. Larson reported this to the headmaster and they had a meeting with her, and he's saying, like, the headmaster saying, like, I can't report the sexual assault to the authorities. Your mother would, like, your guardian would have to do that, so I need to call your mom.
I don't know if you caught it. The way that he's positioning this is to deter her from saying
100%, because he's like, well, you were drinking a lot.
Yeah.
Are you sure that you said
sure
no?
That this is what happened?
Did you say the word no?
Like, and but it's going to show up on their college applications, and it could really tarnish like their chances of getting into college.
I was sitting there watching it. I was sitting there watching it, and he's just like, and she's like, well, what would happen? And he's like, well, it would be reported to the authorities. It would go on to their permanent record and their college applications. And I'm sitting there shouting good at the TV. But of course, everything's being done to deter her, except Mr. Larson, who's still like, no. He's like, no, there is no because he's saying, like, are you sure this is what happened? Mr. Larson's the one who's like, no, this was not a consensual anything. And he's standing there.
They raped her.
He's like, they raped her. Yeah. Like, this is not a consensual anything. And I really appreciate that character.
Yeah.
But of course, because the headmaster has put all of this idea into her head, and is then on top of that, like, well, I have to call your mom. Like, I can't report it to the authorities. She would have to report it. I need to speak to your guardian about it. She's like, no, never mind, because again, we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to ruin our chances of doing better than we've done, because that's what's been drilled into her head forever.
And so that's all that matters, right?
Yeah. So she doesn't report it. Mr. Larson is fired for letting the girls leave the dance, which made me want to hurt somebody too. That made me
I didn't
really
catch that part.
He was fired after. I wasn't. I was unclear as to whether or not he just left because he could not deal with this, which would also have been understandable. Yeah. No, he was fired because he let them leave school grounds.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's fired anyway. I mean, obviously the headmaster just didn't want the headlines, right?
Oh, 100%. And he didn't.
Big headlines.
I think he saw how much Mr. Larson stood up for her and was very no, I don't think we can sweep this under the rug. And I wouldn't be surprised if he continued to speak about it after. Yeah. So I'm sure that they found a very easy reason to let him go. Yeah. So that's fun. She does actually in more present day, she does run into Mr. Larson. Yeah. Weirdly, weirdly her fiance knows, his wife, I believe. Yeah. Or something, or knows him through work in some way, shape, or form. So they do run into each other and they have a little bit of a conversation about stuff. But he's really so you have the contrast between him trying to do these things and then she's getting vaguely the same type of advice from Arthur and Ben when she goes to see them.
See, the problem with Arthur is that his messaging itself is good.
Is correct.
It's his delivery is crap.
100%.
He's basically making her feel bad. And so Ben had gone through
oh my God,
his own assault by these boys. They are bullies. They're awful. Mm-hmm. They had said to Ben, oh, hey, man, why don't you come smoke with us? And, of course, Ben, being not very popular, was yeah, okay, cool. I might get in with the cool kids for once. And they lure him into the woods, they pin him down, and one of them takes a shit on his chest.
Which is just...
It's disgusting.
And apparently, my understanding is that he went home after and self-mutilated. Maybe attempted suicide is what my understanding was.
And so this is the problem with Arthur, is that he's so angry that
and he's so blunt about all of it.
Yeah, and it's unclear if they've ever done anything to Arthur himself or if he's just angry at observing how these three guys keep getting away with this stuff.
It seems like a combination. I don't know that they've ever done anything very overtly serious to him, but they're always shitty to him.
Yeah, and so he's just your angsty teenager who wants to take them down, basically. Yeah. But he keeps making her feel guilty and saying that she's this, that, and the other, and she's not.
Oh, she's enabling them, and she's making this so much worse by being such a shit about this. But which, again, I think is coming from a place of someone privileged. He doesn't have to get a scholarship to go to this school.
He wants to go to Columbia, right?
Exactly.
He's probably a legacy
and he said he's a legacy. His dad's a Columbia graduate. So
there you go. So it's this combination. There's a lot going on in this movie.
Yeah, it's hard to explain all of it.
There's a lot, and there's a lot of nuances and a lot of social ups and downs that they're trying to explore, as well as a very serious gang rape and then a school shooting.
Yeah. Okay. So we're getting into so much detail here, but it's weird because there's so many different themes to talk about that I feel like it's difficult to skirt over any of them. It's hard not to talk about them.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. So what winds up happening is basically she tells Arthur to fuck off because, that's it. Again, the delivery is not good. The messaging is correct. The delivery could use a lot of work. We're given to understand sometime between whatever period of time goes by, I assume a number of weeks, perhaps. I don't know. First of all, there's some totally fucking heinous shit with Liam, the guy that she actually, is sort of with, but not really, when they are driving to school, right after. He takes her to get her Plan B.
Oh, yeah.
And then has this disgusting conversation with her in the car where she's, saying, she was really drunk. I really don't remember anything, and she says to him, she's like, I think I was raped. I don't remember saying yes to any of this. And he freaks the fuck out and is like, do you even know what rape is? How would you even say something like that? You're crazy. And I was like, oh boy.
It's just a lot. The whole movie, you're just watching it and you're like, oh this God. Is so much. I don't know how this girl, the only explanation is that she was just frozen and confused by everything.
I think so.
For so long that she didn't end up, trying to take her own life or something.
I think it was put your head down and move on.
Yeah.
Basically is the way that it is. Because her mom's very much like that. So I think that it just, those aspects probably rubbed off on her. Yeah. And don't ruffle any feathers. Don't do anything that's going to bother anyone. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So all of that was terrible. And then we get to a point later on where we do see that, Arthur and Ben, I guess, planned and then went through with a school shooting, which is a scene that probably goes on for longer than it needs to. But
it really does.
Yeah, it does. There are like a good number
there's
of...
so many like flashbacks and like back and forth and
it's
up
a
and
lot.
down. And
This
I'm
movie
like,
does drag a little bit at some times that you're like,
Yeah.
I don't think that this was all necessary. It starts to get a bit gratuitous. But anyway, we're given to, understand that basically that's it. They were fed up. They decided to do this, which they do, they do kill like a good number of the students in the school. They set off a couple of bombs in the cafeteria. All of this is very Columbine reminiscent, by the way. Like, that's really what I was thinking of the whole time is 1999. Columbine was in 1999.
Two boys.
They did have bombs rigged in the cafeteria and things like that. 2 boys who were outcasts, or considered outcasts anyway, and angry at everyone who decided to do this, who did, kill a number of people, including people who had bullied them while they were in school. And they had the same plan, which is, the plan I think that a lot of these people have, is to kill themselves at the end and whatnot. But what actually wound up happening, we're getting all of this because Ani's decided to do the documentary, so she's kind of explaining from her perspective what happened.
But she's also leaving out a lot of the details.
Yes.
Like, you realize that as she's talking. Like, she doesn't talk about how her mom reacts to this. She doesn't talk about, like, how no one supported her, basically.
No.
And that's why she never went on the record. She was made to feel shame for everything.
Yeah, that's it. Like, she was made to feel like everything was her own fault. So she... basically, she hides with a friend of hers. Thank God that girl Beth gets away, which I was like, okay. And, at first, like, sees Ben, who does, I believe he kills Peyton.
I think he kills Peyton first and then Liam.
And then
right
Liam
away.
after that.
Yeah.
And lets her and Beth go because, again, he was friends with them and Ben has no reason to do that to them, so he leaves them alone. She winds up in a confrontation in the cafeteria. This is where things start to get a little off the rails for me.
Yeah.
She winds up in a confrontation because Arthur shows up in the cafeteria. He shoots Dean twice, and I'm sure one of those is what injured him permanently in the end. And then has a confrontation with Ani where I guess we're given to understand that he's going to shoot her as well, more than likely. She picked up a knife on the floor and she stabbed him, it turns out. And
well, she had taken the knife previously
from somewhere.
Yeah, because she wanted to like get out of there.
Yeah,
she was with Dean.
Oh
like,
yes, and she like picked it up. Yeah, because he's sitting there and he can't move, obviously. So. I don't know. And then she stabs Arthur, and you're like, wow, okay,
yeah,
wow.
You're just like, okay.
But there's just, I don't know.
Ben apparently takes his own life.
Yes, he's taken his own life, and there you go. I don't know, man. There's just something about, like, that final confrontation that just felt, like, too wild for me.
The whole thing was, like, I don't know, a little bit, like, far-fetched. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, it was, I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, so she's filming the documentary. I've been through a school shooting, so I can comment a little bit on it. There was just something that was a little bit too staged. Yeah, I guess is the way I would put it. If anything,
it's a lot messier in real life.
Yeah, it's a lot messier. It's a lot faster.
Yeah,
than this.
Yeah,
it's not.
The cops would have been there well before all of this happened.
So. Anyway, so we see that that's all that's happened. She's gone through her whole story with the documentary crew, and apparently initially they had been talking about her and Dean having like a meetup on camera. So because it turns out that Dean is the person who started the heinous rumor that Ani helped Arthur and Ben plan the shooting. And even though she didn't do any of it herself, she helped them plan to execute it. And
they were all going to take their own lives.
And they were all going to kill themselves at the end. And he says that she helped them plan this because she wanted Dean to be her boyfriend and he didn't want to. Get the fuck out of here.
I know.
Get out of here. Just, like, fuck off and die, Dean, honestly.
Well, he says later on that it's because he was scared and he assumed that she was going to tell everybody about the gang rape.
Yes.
And, he already couldn't walk. So,
I feel like I got my payback already for that, which he says that to her and you're like, ew, gross. Yeah. Anyway, he shows up at the filming and she freaks out and she leaves because that would be very jarring. And then later on she goes to a book signing that he's doing.
Because he's sharing his story.
Yeah. Confronts him at the book signing, speaks to him about, what's happened. happened. And, you know, finally, because she's like, I need you to say out loud, like, what happened, because he's skirting around the issue, and gets him to fully admit out loud that he raped her and knew exactly what he was doing. She's recorded that conversation, which I knew when I was watching that scene. I'm like, she's recording this.
I'm like, why is he just liberally saying all this stuff?
Idiot.
Like, obviously she's recording him.
Idiot. Also, can I just say, too, they used to call her Finny in high school, and I fucking hate that he still uses her nickname when he sees her.
I know. When he, like, bursts into the room and he's like, Finny! I'm like,
he's
oh, you did not just do that.
Overly familiar. It's disgusting. Anyway, but she gets him to admit that, listens to the recording, and then proceeds to write a whole piece for the New York Times Magazine detailing everything that did happen. They obviously, they like it, and they're like, well, we're fucking publishing this because I can only imagine, like, a famous politician. I can only imagine the kind of thing that they'd want to publish about that.
And she went quite in detail about everything.
She ends her relationship with Luke because she basically fully admits to him, like, I do love you, I do care about you, but I've definitely been using you to give myself a particular standing, and to give me the, like, you know, to give me the life that I think that I should have, and that I've thought that I should have for a long time.
And it was surprising to me, like, from the beginning that, you know, like, once you see, like, her school life and these three boys, what they did to her, and the type of people who they are, I found it very surprising, you know, looking at the parallels between them and her fiancé.
Yeah,
because,
I know.
Like, they're very similar.
I know.
Like, there's nothing different
We're
there.
seeing him, and I'm like, ew, what was he like in high school?
Well, that's it, you know? Like,
like, he seems okay now, but
like,
I don't
I'm sure
know.
he's fine now, and, like, you know, I'm sure most of these guys, like, you know, they grow
don't
up
act
eventually.
this way now. Well, yeah, that guy Dean saying he has a wife and kids.
Yeah, like, you know, I'm sure on the surface it's all like that, but it was just very odd. And, like, you know, also his behavior towards her, how he wants her to move to London, and how he's, like, really pushing her to
where
it.
It's very much like, you know, like, no, I love you, and I want you to be happy. I want you to move past this. I want you to be able to be strong and move past this. I hate very much that they have a conversation about that too, where he's saying, like, you know, I thought, like, after he reads the New York Times article, and he freaks out because he's like, I thought you would have done it more in private. And I've always thought you were so strong and everything. And I'm like, dude, she didn't even go to therapy. Like, do you have any idea, like, what she would need to be able to get through all of this? Yeah, this is insane.
Not only what they did to her, but then the entire ass school shooting, and then killing a guy.
She killed a
with
person.
Her bare hands.
Legitimately.
Like, it's like these three things together are not easy to just move past because you're tough.
Yeah, but,
you know?
oh, I'm tough. I'll make it through. Like, what?
Like, what?
It's wild. Anyway, so she's able to do that. Her relationship ends, but it's definitely for the better. I don't think that they were well suited. I don't think that was a good idea. And she's able to actually start working for the New York Times Magazine at the end of the film and put her experience out there. And the positive of it is that we get a lot of, like, Me Too aspects, because she publishes the story, and there's a ton of people who, you know, respond to her story and are like, you know, something very similar happened to me. I'm so glad to be able to, like, read someone else's story and feel a connection with other people and everything, and just kind of, like, you know, feel like I can maybe talk about things more now because I've never spoken about it before. So she's able to hear from other survivors who have been through similar experiences, and hopefully help them feel, I guess, like, even a little bit better about being able to talk about it.
Exactly. And we were saying this earlier, there was, like, the movie should have ended, like, 15 minutes before it did.
Yeah, it was weird.
Because, like, there was, like, this weird scene at the end where, like, she's walking along and a reporter stops her or someone and says, like, oh, I work for
Bloomberg.
That's it. And and she's like, I hope you enjoy your 15 minutes of fame, because I've followed Dean throughout his career for many years.
He's helped a lot of people.
He's helped a lot of people, and, like, you know, kind of like, you're trash for, like, doing this. And so she turns around and tells her, sorry, I didn't get your name. Oh, I'll just remember you as the person who I told to fuck off on Fifth Avenue. But I'm like, there was really, like, no character development.
No, that didn't.
Like, yes, I get it. Like, it's kind of like she's being more, like,
assertive about
and, like,
her own personality,
and, like, coming into herself a little bit more. But it's like, I don't know if that was what would have actually happened.
No,
like,
I
as
don't
somebody
think it was.
who, you know, she had worked so hard to get to a certain point in her life.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, fine. Like, because she keeps saying this thing like, I'm like a wind-up doll, wind me up, and I'll tell you what you want to hear.
Yes, exactly.
So maybe it's her way of fighting against that.
Of pushing against that and not just, like, cowing to someone who, like, makes a comment like that. Which, like, you know, is already, like, gross. I'm like, ew, a woman should not make a comment like that to another woman. But anyway. But yeah, it was just, it felt like a weirdly stilted scene. If anything, I would have liked it if it happened earlier in the film. If anything else, like almost right after she published the article or something. Fuck, I don't know. Whatever, something like that. Anyway, yeah, it's a lot. It's got a lot of heavy topics in it. I won't say that I found that they were all realistically depicted, though.
It was like there was just two, like, you know what? They could have done this almost as a series or
kind
something.
Of.
To even like a 4-part or a 3-part miniseries or something.
Yeah.
Where you would have had maybe a little bit more character development. You would have been able to like explore.
Yeah, we were throwing a little
bit more.
A lot of different really heavy trauma into a 2-hour span, which just like you'd need so much more time to cover those things.
To do them justice.
To cover them properly is what I'm trying to think of like a better way to say it. But yeah, that's it, to really properly do them justice and do the character justice that way. Like Mila Kunis really gives it her all in
she
this.
Does.
But it's just, it was more like the writing itself, I think, where we had to rush through certain aspects that I was like, oh boy, okay.
Yeah, and like, you know, we were saying this earlier, there's so much TV now.
Yeah.
You know, that like this would have been an opportunity
to
have
100%.
TV
Make a miniseries.
You know, and it would have been great.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But no, it was still good. Again, I didn't fall asleep.
No, that's it. Look, it was perfectly decent. Would I watch it again? Probably not.
No, probably
but
not.
you know, it was very heavy, so it's not something that you're just gonna put on.
We shy away from heavy topics. It's just like a lot all in one.
In one 2-hour film, if anything. So have you guys seen this movie? Also, I'd like to know if anybody has read the book. Like, I'd be curious to see, I guess, how similar it is. The author wrote the screenplay, so I would imagine fairly similar, unless she made some really big changes that I don't know about. But you guys can let us know about that on Instagram over at fullybookedca, and you can also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. And if you are still here with us, please feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening, because it really helps us get the episodes out in front of more people. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.